What are some practical ways to navigate trauma? The Bondi attacks just happened yesterday, and I want to talk about this to help you protect our minds. This is episode 9 of the Golden Pause, where we help you to retrain your brain and to increase your peace. And normally we talk about consciousness, happiness, creating change, and many other things through the filter of hypnosis with me, a clinical hypnotherapist. My name is Lucas. Obviously, this episode is it's with heavy hearts that we come together today. I think last night we all witnessed the horrific attack on innocent people, and as a country, we're just trying to make sense of something that just seems so senseless, so unnecessary and unneeded in I guess anywhere else in the world, but in this country, in Australia, we haven't experienced anything quite like that before. And so obviously our hearts are with the victims, with their families, and the whole of the community in Bondi who would be going through such shock, such heavy hearts today, and maybe it's useful to think about the word condolences. The etymology, like the background of the word condolences, it comes from con dolore, and that means con meaning together, united together in something, and dolore meaning pain. And I think that's a really that's the essence of the word of what we're feeling in Australia. Just a deep sense of shared pain for what's happened. And even if you weren't in Bondi, which most people that would watch this wouldn't have been there, the exposure to a traumatic event still impacts us greatly. And I've talked in previous episodes about something in our brains called mirror neurons, which are some parts of our brain that have been discovered relatively recently that fire in our brains when we observe somebody doing or experiencing something that we are capable of experiencing ourselves. And the way that they fire is as if we are experiencing or doing the same thing. And so these mirror neurons is sort of a key factor in empathy and things like that. But it means that when we observe traumatic experiences, in some way we are also sharing in that traumatic experience. And this is well known especially with first responders and police, with something called vicarious trauma, which is just having this exposure to circumstances or traumatic events imprints something in us so that we experience that trauma or an aspect of that trauma. I don't want to say that by us watching the events we are experiencing what the people there had, but there is a sharing, a shared pain in that sense. And even more so today and currently with social media and TV, where the images and videos are just repeated over and over again, and they are so accessible and they are so raw in the way that we see the events that happen in the world. And so this idea of sharing, having some aspect of shared trauma is a really valid point. And so I wanted to talk about what are some ways, some practical ways to think about trauma, so that we can find ways or start to find ways to navigate through it. And that's what I wanted the focus of the conversation part of this episode to be about. And in previous episode, I had talked about the parallels between how we get unwell physically, how there are very strong parallels to how we get unwell mentally as well. And so a trauma, like physically, a trauma can be a broken bone, a car crash, an event. But also that we can be impacted virally, we can be impacted by the hygiene, by habits, etc. So there's very strong parallels. And so I wanted to look at physical trauma to give us clues about how we might start to approach the trauma of observing and experiencing this event in Australia. And the first thing that's really critical is to notice how absorbing the event is. And when you're talking about a physical trauma, if you hurt your hand, if you break a bone, all your attention goes to that pain. It's like everything becomes absorbed by in that pain, and in that way, there's a strong alignment to the hypnotic is a state of being deeply absorbed in something, or that's a component of it. And so, in trauma, you can notice how absorbing it is. So have you noticed how there's this sense of being pulled back into the trauma, going back into social media, that you, for some, like we're needing to check and see things again. I don't know if you've noticed that for you, but it's worthwhile to be conscious about it, to be conscious in the pull towards it, so that you don't partake in seeing these things without conscious purpose behind it, because it is traumatic. And I want you to notice how news organizations will use this absorption to try to I guess get their viewership and get people's attention, how the focus on the pain and the trauma is used to shape our attention. It's something to be conscious of, for how they'll push this hypnotic driver, the absorption. And obviously, by being reabsorbed when we're watching social media and TV, and if we're watching the videos and images, how it re-experiences the trauma, how we are embedding that trauma deeper within our experience. And so it's very important to be conscious of that. And I guess the practical tip is to actually be very conscious and purposeful about how much you will watch this. And so the tip is to make a decision to say, I will watch maybe half an hour to catch up on certain events, or whatever amount you feel comfortable with, but don't just let it happen to you, because there are forces, the news, etc., that are working to try to pull you in to observe and to watch and to be absorbed. And so it's important that you decide how much you partake in it, and because that starts to increase your sense of power through that experience. So that's the first thought that I wanted to share with you. The second one is how the sense and the feeling of helplessness when there's a physical trauma, how people feel like something has to be done, but not knowing what, and how that creates a sense of helplessness. And in psychology, that's a term called, it's connected to a term called the bystander effect, where when there is, let's say, a car accident, or there's some kind of event that is outside the realm of normal life, watch, and they might be aware that somebody has to do something, but nobody knows what, and so everybody freezes. Everybody is waiting for somebody else to act or to do something. And in an ambiguous circumstance, people are totally primed to be led, to follow. So because everybody's waiting for somebody else to say what to do, when somebody comes in demonstrating some sense of authority, especially if it's someone who's in a place of authority, everybody's primed to follow. And so in this situation, it's really worthwhile to notice that sense of ambiguity, and to be conscious that when there is ambiguity, where there isn't some kind of programming in our mind that helps us to jump into action, to know what to do, how it freezes us and how it primes us to just follow, sometimes for good, sometimes for not good. And so to be conscious of that, so that you don't just automatically follow. And a great example is that heroic man that jumped into stopping one of the attackers and took his gun away. I was really curious to figure out, like, what's this person's background, because in those kinds of circumstances, it's very, very rare for someone to break out of that almost hypnotic state of being frozen, of just not knowing how to act, like a trance, and jumping into action. It's very rare. And there was a whole lot of research done in, I think it was the 50s, 60s, by a psychologist called Milgram. If you search the Milgram experiment, you'll find out all about it, where how someone in a place of authority, when there is an ambiguous situation, how people will follow someone in authority, even though it may be doing something that they would feel isn't right, how they will follow. The interesting thing with that heroic man, I just found today his father talking about him, and how he had policing training. So obviously there was some programming on that helped him to default to that programming to act in that situation. And so being conscious of how primed we are that something needs to be done, and so the whole community is looking for something to be done, how it primes us to just follow without thought, without real assessment on what is good and purposeful. And this is connected to the next thought that I wanted to share about, is that I want you to notice how when there's a physical trauma, how often it's connected to a hot anger, there might be like an outburst of anger from the person having had that trauma, and negative feelings in general. And I wanted to bring awareness to maybe some hot feelings that you may have inside of you, because that is the perfect recipe to be controlled in this circumstance. For a community, when a community is experiencing hot emotions and there is ambiguity about what should happen, that is like a recipe for like a mass hypnosis, for people to be led without thought. And so being conscious of those hot emotions is really important, because it makes us vulnerable to control. And maybe you might even notice how appealing or enticing the idea of some new law. Politicians are jumping in and trying to come up with some new law that will make people feel like something is being done. But are those laws actually going to do anything good, anything positive? It may seem like it, but are they? When people are in an ambiguous situation, in hot emotions, the ability to make a deep, good assessment go way down. And I just had this thought of, whenever laws are drafted in crisis and they promise safety, they rarely ever deliver on that safety. Whenever those laws drafted in crisis and promise safety, they rarely deliver safety, but most often remove some kind of freedom. And we saw this in 9/11, where we had in the US, they had the Patriot Act, which basically led to the whole build-up of the NSA, which then meant all communications just filtered and captured. So everything that people message to each other on their phones, etc. So that whole loss of privacy. We saw some similar patterns around COVID, and we're seeing similar patterns now, where there is a promise to bring in some new law that it will make you safe, but rarely does that actually produce what the promise is. And when you think about it, we recently had some stabbing attacks, and certain things were done, but somehow it didn't stop that. And so being conscious, and I guess the tip that is there to share is turning your hot anger into cold determination, to be resolute, especially to avoid the biggest, the most likely event historically in this type of situations is hot anger, promise of some law protecting, creating safety, that being introduced, and then people forget and move on with their lives with that, when the real problem, the real cause, was never addressed or resolved. And so turning your hot anger into cold determination that you will not be distracted, that you will continue to push people in leadership, people in government to create change that addresses the true root causes for why an event like this happened, is the most powerful thing that you can do right now. And so I guess where the focus maybe should be placed is on what allows that creates terror, regardless of whether it's left or right, whatever ideology, its religious background, etc., regardless of what that is, what is behind what is allowing that ideology to be in here, that is what that's what deserves the focus, not some band-aid law that will never really address what was driving these events. And so the tips so far are: make a decision about how much you will engage. Be aware of that sense of ambiguity, and be aware that whenever there's that sense of ambiguity, you are primed to be led without thinking. So be conscious of when you feel that, and turn your hot anger into cold determination, being resolute to see true change in this area. And I guess the final tip that I wanted to share to help you to start to navigate these kinds of situations, but you know what? It's not just connected. These things are not just connected to a trauma relating to Bondi. There could be similar situations. Let's say if you've had a very scary medical diagnosis, that can also equally feel ambiguous. And in that kind of circumstance, people will just outsource the thinking and decision making to a person that looks to have authority. And so it's worthwhile to be conscious of these things, so that you can. It's not to say that, oh no, you shouldn't follow someone in authority, but it's to do it consciously, to be conscious in the moment, and to be deciding purposefully how to participate in the events, in the solutions, etc. So the final tip is to learn to control your inner state, to make that a priority in your life, because basically this is like a superpower. If you're able to maintain peace in a crisis, whether it's a family crisis, whether it's a situational crisis, whether it's a work crisis, being able to maintain peace in your inner state gives you clarity, which is basically, in a crisis, clarity is in high demand. It's very needed. And so that's the essence of why we make in here, we make the golden reset to be something that we do each session, because we want you to learn to gain control and direction for your inner state, so that you purposefully experience life, that life doesn't happen to you, that circumstances don't happen to you, because they will, circumstances will happen, but that you internally will maintain your sense of control of your life, of control of what you can be in control of. But it's deeply empowering to have that inner peace, inner control. And so if that's something that's of interest to you, to increase your peace, to be a calmer, happier you, this is the part of the show that we call the Golden Reset. And I'll just put a little bit of background music. And some people say that gaining this type of peace inside, it may feel like an internal massage, or just a deeper inner peace. But it's something that you can learn and that you can develop, and to develop a habit of having, so that it's deeply embedded in you. And when there is trauma or crisis, it allows you to have clarity about how to move forward or how to deal with the circumstances. And so I'd love to just take a moment together, and I just want to invite you to find a comfortable chair or a comfortable place to sit in. And obviously, if you're driving, if you're using any kind of machinery, now is not the right time to participate in the Golden Reset. But otherwise, I just want to encourage you to get a little bit comfortable, and I'll just put a little image on the screen so that it's less distracting, because right now is an opportunity to just find peace. And it's a place to just slow down in some way. Over the last few hours, the last 24 hours, it feels like so many things have moved so quickly. And now is an important time to slow down. And you may feel comfortable to close your eyes or not. But however you are most comfortable, I want to invite you to take a deep breath. I want you to feel that sense of your chest and stomach just stretching out as you breathe in. And as you breathe in and then slowly out, you might start to notice just a little bit more peace. You may notice tension from your shoulders just relaxing a little bit, and even muscles on your face just becoming a little bit more relaxed. And I just invite you to take another deep, big breath, expanding your stomach, and if you can, just hold it for a few seconds. And when you're ready, let it go slowly. And that slow release of breath is your body regaining a sense of control and clarity over your body. And there are so many thoughts that may be going through your mind, that have been going through your mind. And that's okay. They can go through and they can pass through. But your breath is the leader you are looking for. That breath is guiding your whole being into a sense of calm and clarity, something that's needed right now. And as you breathe, you may start to feel that increased sense of calm. And it's a relief to know that you can have this. As you hear my voice, for a minute you can even send my voice into the background if you would like. And just notice your heart. You may notice some tingling in your fingers or some sensations as you become calmer and your body is knowing that now is a time for clarity and peace. That regardless of what is happening outside, that this is important. Having clarity of thought, clarity of heart. It's one of the most useful things to have in moments like this. And so allowing yourself to feel that, allowing your breath to lead you into peace, is time well spent. And so, as you let another sigh of relief, of release, allow yourself to feel that peace a little bit stronger, a little bit more. And as you do, you can know and be certain that you can return to this anytime. Anytime you feel any sense of overwhelm or too much, that you are able to regain control internally through this breath. And so, as that thought settles deeply inside of you, and as you feel that peace deeply inside of you, now is the time to start to stir and to return to attention. But even as you do, even as you maybe start to open your eyes, start to feel your hands and to be back, even as you do that, that peace stays within you, deep in your chest. And so, as you return to attention, as you return to being present of your room, coming back to full attention, I want to thank you for being here today, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. I want to thank you for taking part. It's important that we as a community remain peaceful, wise, and have clarity in how we move forward, so that we avoid being led into places and into situations that we don't want. And so I want to thank you for being part of episode 9. We go live every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for being part of today, and I will see you on Thursday. Thank you.